Welcome everyone to the US 69 public meeting on December 8th, 2021. We're glad that you're all here. We're going to get started with a presentation in just a minute. We're glad that you're all here. We're going to get started with a presentation here in just a moment. It should last about 30 to 45 minutes, and then we'll open the podium for comments. You'll be able to type in comments that you have, and we will respond to those comments. The meeting lasts until 7:30, and at that time, if we haven't responded to your comments, we'll be responding to those in writing. Thanks very much, and if you are a call-in user, you can hit *3 to raise your hand. I don't think we have any call-in users right now, but if we do, and we will be responding to those questions. This meeting will be recorded and it will be posted online tomorrow. So again, thank you for being here, and we look forward to answering your questions. I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay Douglas, the Deputy Secretary of the Kansas Department of Transportation, to kick us off.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our third public meeting for the 69Express project. I am Deputy Secretary of the Kansas Department of Transportation, and on behalf of KDOT and KTA and the City of Overland Park, we want to welcome you, and we are so excited to be here today to discuss, ongoing development of US 69. We know that this is such an important project for Overland Park, and it is a huge corridor right through town. So we want to make sure that you all are staying informed as we continue through the development process. We've got a great group of experts here tonight that are going to tell you about that ongoing development. We're going to provide you kind of a progress update on where we are with the project. The environmental assessment has also been largely completed, has been submitted, and any park and trail impacts are also going to be reported out. And then many of you, we have heard loud and clear that noise is a concern today and is a concern for the future. So we will be providing you an update on how that noise analysis was conducted and what the results of that are. And then as well as ongoing engagement opportunities. So as we move out of the noise recommendation and those types of things, how are you going to be able to continue to stay informed as we keep working on this project as it moves towards construction? And then, of course, answer as many questions as we can get to before 7:30. So thank you all again for attending, and we are really looking forward to having some dialogue with you later tonight. With that, if you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Cameron McGowan, our project manager on this project. Go ahead, Cameron.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good evening, everyone. Thanks again for joining us, and we really do appreciate your interest in this project. We want to start off this evening's meeting with a bit of a review of the schedule, kind of where we stand with respect to progress, and then a short review of where we left off at our last public meeting back in April. So we flip to the next slide. So in terms of progress, so this is a similar schedule, the same schedule that we've been showing the last couple of public meetings going back to when the study began late last year. And that red line that you see on there represents where we are today here in early December of 2021. Over the last 15 months, we've completed the toll study, which concluded this last summer. As Lindsay alluded to, we're nearly complete with the environmental analysis, which is going to be a big focus of the meeting tonight. We've also completed the traffic analysis, which is currently under review by the Federal Highway Administration, and we've completed the majority of the preliminary engineering that's needed to support the toll study and the environmental analysis, and then to prepare for final design and construction. As we look ahead, we've begun some of the preparations for construction, including the process of procuring a designer contractor team to build the project, which we'll touch on again here at the end of the presentation tonight. You go to the next slide. Okay, so at our last public meeting back in April, the team presented a range of alternatives, a number of alternative solutions that were under consideration for improving US 69. And shown here on this screen are those alternatives. Those included improving alternate routes, or could the parallel city street network be expanded to relieve congestion and safety issues on US 69? It also included looking at capacity management solutions where technology solutions like ramp metering could be used to get better performance out of the existing system. The team also evaluated multimodal strategies and whether those transit solutions or improvements to bicycle and pedestrian facilities could address the needs. And then lastly, we presented two different approaches to expanding US 69 with additional capacity or new lanes to address the future and current safety issues. At that last meeting, we presented the analysis of all of this range of alternatives and communicated that the last two options that are shown there in that box are what was moving forward as reasonable alternatives, or the two strategies that best met the project's purpose and need, and that's been carried forward with further study. We can go to the next slide. So following the last public meeting, our team has been carrying forward those two alternatives for adding capacity to 69, either the express toll lanes alternative and the traditional widening alternative. And the team evaluated ways that these two alternatives are similar and ways that they're different. So the two alternatives are similar in that they would both fully reconstruct US 69 with new pavement and bridges. Both would address known safety and congestion points, such as the Blue Valley Parkway interchange and the I-435 interchange, and both would make improvements to arterial streets and bike and pedestrian facilities in the corridor. But these two alternatives do have some key differences, especially from an environmental perspective. The express lanes has a smaller overall footprint, which in turn keeps the traffic further away from homes and businesses, reduces the environmental impacts, such as impacts to streams and wetlands and parks. And lastly, the express lanes alternative is a more transit-friendly alternative, as the express lanes offer transit vehicles the ability to operate on a congestion-free trip and thereby increase the trip reliability for transit. But not all this analysis was entirely technical in nature. I'm gonna actually send this back to Lindsay to talk a little bit more about the stakeholder engagement activities that also entered into this evaluation.
Yes, Thank you, Cameron. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that our community engagement thus far has been very robust. We have reached over 1.4 million people through media coverage, advisory group meetings, public meetings like the one that you're attending tonight. We've had a number of community presentations. Many of homeowners associations have reached out to us, Lions clubs, Rotary, and have been keeping your elected officials briefed on this project as well. Really appreciate everybody's time that they've taken to engage in the focus groups and the public meetings. We have definitely heard from people all around Johnson County and Miami County about the importance of this corridor and what those improvements should look like. Go ahead to the next slide. And as we worked through the process and we got down to that preferred alternative that Cameron was reviewing, we did get the express toll lane project. That alternative is approved. So the city of Overland Park approved it. And then per the legislation, it moves on to the Kansas Turnpike Authority Board. And the project received unanimous approval from the board there. And then we also went to the State Finance Council. So the top legislative leaders in the state review this project from the standpoint of the community, but also the state overall. And they unanimously approved it as well. So with all of those checks through the legislation, we now have been approved to move forward with the express toll lanes and move this project again onto construction. Go ahead to the next slide. So I'm going to turn this over to Brandon, and he is going to walk through the preferred alternative and some of the data that we used and to arrive at that impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Next slide, please. So at our last public meeting, we were going through the alternative development process and screening. We analyzed those alternatives for impacts and their ability to address the corridor's issues, and ultimately selected the preferred alternative. After that selection of the preferred alternative, the team documented the process in an environmental assessment. The document is currently under review with FHWA, but upon completion in the next couple weeks, that document will be available for public comment. That formal 30-day review will begin sometime around the end of December, And we'll share more information later with how you can directly comment on that document. Next slide, please. So the express toll lane alternative, how did it emerge as the preferred alternative? It is the alternative that best meets the purpose and need of the project. It best addresses congestion because the use of managed lanes provides improvements in level of service, increases the overall travel speed and throughput of the corridor over a no-build alternative. It's best at addressing traffic safety concerns. The implementation of the express toll lanes is expected to reduce congestion along the corridor, and reducing that congestion will reduce those congestion-related crashes, such as rear ends, side swipes, and those involving sudden changes in speed. Improvements to the crossings over or under US 69 are also anticipated to improve bicycle and pedestrian safety at those crossroads. It results in fewer impacts to the natural and human environment. This is because it has a smaller footprint than a traditional widening would because we are widening to the inside. We also do not have expansive auxiliary lane or city road systems that would be required under a traditional widening alternative. It's lower cost. Even with the addition of the toll equipment, the express toll lane alternative is estimated to be almost $90 million cheaper than a traditional widening alternative that addresses the same congestion issues. It promotes sustainability. The overall smaller project footprint and ability to manage congestion through that dynamic pricing promotes sustainability while addressing infrastructure deficiencies. The managed lanes also increase the corridor's travel speed and makes it more consistent. Getting rid of that stop and go traffic. Flexible choices. The express toll lane provides a long-term flexibility and adaptability that a traditional widening project cannot. The dynamic nature of the toll lanes provides a reliability as well. Finally, it accommodates local and regional growth because it improves connections and addresses congestion throughout the entire corridor, both which are characteristics of local and regional plans. Next slide. This slide gives a brief summary of the potential impacts from the preferred alternative. Final design will ultimately dictate the full scope of these impacts to these resources. The preferred alternative has minimal impacts to wetlands, right now estimated to be under 1 acre. Those impacts will be mitigated through the use of a mitigation bank prior to construction. There are stream and floodplain impacts, but these stream and floodplain impacts will not increase the floodplain risk within the corridor. The project will receive a no-rise certification and for the project study area. Right-of-way impact, there are significant right-of-way impacts of 15 acres. However, with those 15 acres, we are only impacting one residence, which is along 167th Street. Preferred alternative has minimum impacts to hazardous material sites. Right now, we have an impact to the landfill at 167th Street, but we are not impacting the waste containment portion of the site. And there are 2 bridges along the corridor that could potentially contain lead paint. Finally, there are no permanent impacts to recreational facilities anticipated. We do anticipate some temporary impacts, but those impacts will be returned to their existing condition. In coordination with FHWA, the Section 4F de minimis finding is anticipated for the project. De minimis just means that the project will not adversely affect the activities, features, or attributes of the recreational facilities. So what is Section 4F? Section 4F includes any property that's a publicly owned park, recreational area, or wildlife or waterfowl refuge, or any publicly or privately owned historic site that is eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. But why is Section 4F important? FHWA must determine that there is no feasible and prudent alternative that avoids a Section 4F property, and that the project includes all possible planning to minimize any harm to those properties. So what is a Section 4F de minimis impact? As I mentioned earlier, it's one that does not adversely affect the activities or features or attributes of the property. Next slide, please. So FHWA is going to gather input from the public before making a final decision. That's what part of this meeting is for here. We're going to share with you the potential impacts to these properties, but what they're looking for are 3 conditions: that the improvement does not adversely affect the activities of the park, that the public has had an opportunity to review and comment on the effects of these impacts, and that KDOT proposes that the impacts are minimal and de minimis. Ultimately, FHWA makes the final determination if the impacts are de minimis. So we're going to go through a series of maps here. that will show you the potential impacts to 4F properties. To orient you here, if you look to the left of your screen, that is going to be north on all of these maps. And the leader lines from each of the boxes point to the approximate area of the impact. So starting with Corporate Woods Trail, we are just north of College Boulevard here. This is where the trail goes underneath of US 69 currently. The impact is approximately 415 feet, but is a temporary impact which will require closure of the trail. And the trail will be permanently shifted about 15 to 20 feet to the north. And this is to accommodate some bridge pier locations for the bridges above it and some channel widening. During closure, an alternative route will be provided. Moving south now, Indian Creek Bike and Hike Trail. This is just south of College Boulevard. This is about 400 feet of impact. It's a temporary closure. There are no permanent impacts here, and an alternative route will be provided during the closure. And this is to accommodate widening and drainage as well as the replacement of a culvert. Right in that same area is Indian Valley Park. The impact to Indian Valley Park is along the west edge of the park, along current right-of-way. It's just over 0.6 of an acre of an impact. This is a permanent impact, temporary impact, sorry, no permanent impacts. No recreational facilities are in this portion of the park. This is just to accommodate widening and drainage along US 69. The Grant Street bike lane is just south of 119th Street. It's in orange there. And this is approximately a 600-foot impact of the painted on-road bike lanes on Grant Street. It's a temporary closure, and there will be an alternative route during the closure. And this is to accommodate some utility relocation that will be happening just south of 119th Street in that area. Continuing on, US 69 Trail. This is going to be one you're going to see in a couple spots on here because it's a trail that runs along quite a bit of US 69, and there are temporary impacts on and off throughout the corridor to this trail. Overall, it's approximately 2,000 feet of impact. There will be temporary closures, but no permanent impacts, and there will be a detour provided during construction. And like many of these other ones, you're going to hear this is a grading and to accommodate grading and contouring for the drainage for US 69. The Brandon Place linkage, which is just southwest of the Blue Valley Parkway. This impact is approximately 1 3/4 acres, and there's about 990 feet of trail there too that will be impacted. This is a temporary closure and will slightly realign the trail in this area, and a temporary easement will be required, but there are no permanent impacts. There will be no permanent impact to any of the recreational facilities in this park. The reason for this impact is to accommodate the direct connect ramp from Blue Valley Parkway that will come in on the west side of US 69. And it'll be mostly for grading and contouring and construction of that ramp. The US 69 linkages. US 69 linkages are a series of linear parks that are along US 69. Many of them contain portions of the US 69 trail. We will be impacting approximately 6 acres in multiple locations. You see there's multiple leader lines there from that box. These are temporary impacts, no permanent impacts to the trail, again, to accommodate grading and widening for US 69 and drainage as well. Tomahawk Creek Trail. So here we are just north of 135th Street. This is the trail that runs through the 135th Street interchange. Proximate impacts are about 1,650 feet. Temporary closure, but no permanent impacts, and there will be a detour provided during construction of that. And the reason for this is several of the bridges and the drainage in this area will be reconstructed as part of the project, and this is just to accommodate that construction. Kind of going along with Tomahawk Creek Trail is the Nottingham South Park, which is on the south side of 135th Street. This is an impact to just over 0.6 of an acre. Again, it's temporary in nature with no permanent impacts. There are no recreational facilities where the impact is happening, even though the trail does run through here. This is to accommodate some bridge work in the area. However, we also are going to relocate. There is an existing trail connection to Tomahawk Creek Trail that is outside of Nottingham South Park right now that due to the improvements, we need to relocate that to meet ADA requirements. So we'll be moving that connection into Nottingham South Park actually, so it is an ADA compliant connection. But the area that is going in currently does not have any recreational facilities in it. Moving south, we have 143rd Street Trail and 143rd Street Bike Trail. These essentially, one's a trail on the side of the road, the other one's a painted bike lane. Both of these are about 450 feet long, temporary closure, no permanent impacts, and there'll be a detour during construction. And this is to accommodate construction on actually the US 69 bridge above it. We need to be able to close those facilities to pedestrians and bikes during that construction for safety. Last one here. We've already talked about US 69 linkages in the US 69 trail. You see there are a couple more of those shown here on the map. We have 151st Street Trail, which is at 151st Street. About 500 feet of impact. It'd be a temporary closure with realignment. No permanent impacts. This is actually to accommodate the extension of a third lane through this portion of the 151st Street. So the trail will be moved approximately 10 feet to the north. Kingston Lake Park is the blue shape there on the screen. Approximately 3/10 of an acre of impact. Temporary impacts, no permanent impacts. The area that's being impacted is actually right under where that leader line goes, and there are no recreational facilities in that portion of the park. This is to accommodate some realignment of the 151st Street southbound on-ramp there. Finally, the last one, the Lowell Avenue Trail down at 167th Street. It's a 65 feet of impact. It's where the trail connects at 167th Street. Due to widening of 167th Street and some other improvements there, will be a temporary closure of the end of that trail, but no permanent impacts to that facility. So we want your input on this. As part of the 4F process, we need input from the public. So there are a couple ways that you can offer that input tonight. You can ask a question at the virtual podium later this evening. You can access the on-demand virtual open house, which I believe we'll have a link for later. You can also provide your comment during the EA document review when that's posted later this month, or you can email the project team through the feedback link on the project website. Thank you.
All right, so I want to turn our attention now to the noise study that was conducted, part of the environmental review. We know through all the various public engagement, stakeholder engagement through this project, that noise is one of the most important issues for the community. We've had a number of conversations with homes associations, property owners and tenants that live along the corridor, so we know how important this issue is. So I want to spend a few minutes here this evening going through that noise study, how it was conducted, how we determined the noise impacts, and the results of that study, and what we're recommending for noise abatement as part of the project. Go to the next slide. Okay, so there's two primary sets of criteria that guide how noise analysis is conducted. On the federal side, the federal guidance really centers around how impacts are defined, and this is done at the federal level so that there's consistency in how those noise impacts are evaluated on a nationwide basis. However, a lot of the details on implementation of that is delegated to the states. So KDOT's noise policies guide decision making on items such as, how much of a noise reduction am I trying to achieve? Are the costs of abating the noise reasonable? Those are things that are delegated to the state. But based on those two sets of criteria, the team then identifies who or what properties are impacted or might be impacted in the future, and then evaluates the options for mitigating those impacts. So if you want to go to the next slide. So the first step in this noise study process is really to determine what are the existing conditions and then predict what we believe the sound levels will be like in the future. So this is done primarily using a software model, but it's validated using field measurements. So to make sure that that software model is actually accurately representing the sound levels that are in the field. And that software model takes into account, specific elements about the project, things like the terrain, are the existing properties higher or lower than the roadway, that sort of thing, and the distance between the roadway and surrounding properties, and then also, what's the anticipated level of traffic that will be on the roadway. So you go to the next slide. So once that's the process of kind of understanding what do those existing and future conditions look like. But once those are modeled, we then can determine if various receptors, and that's just a term, what we really mean is a home or a residence or a property that's along the corridor, whether or not they're impacted. And an impact can take a couple of different forms. First off, are the existing noise levels already high? And for residential properties, we look to see whether noise levels are above 66 decibels today as that threshold. The second is, or the second case is where there's an impact that's considered is, are the noise levels predicted to increase by more than 10 decibels as a result of the project? If either one of those cases is met, then the receptor is considered to be impacted. What we found as we went through this analysis is on this project, in the vast majority of cases, it's that first criteria is what is occurring, that being that the noise levels are already above that impact threshold. So we've been able to verify both with field measurements and with the noise model that what people have been saying consistently is it's loud along US 69, and we've been able to validate that. What that really means is that the opportunity to do something about that, to do something about those noise levels that are already high, is actually with this project. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay, so we know that there are impacts, and now we need to look at what do we do about those impacts. So the next step in the process is to determine whether abatement solutions are both feasible and reasonable. So a solution is considered feasible if it can effectively provide a meaningful benefit to the surrounding properties in a way that is constructible, that can be built, and it can be done in such a way that it doesn't cause additional environmental impacts. So the meaningful benefit that we're shooting for is a reduction in noise of 7 decibels, but no less than 5. So for some perspective on what is that type of reduction, how is that perceived by the human ear? A 5 decibel reduction is considered clearly noticeable, and a 10 decibel reduction is perceived as half as loud. So this target of 7 decibels does provide a meaningful noise reduction benefit. So that's on the feasible side. Then a solution is considered reasonable if the solution can be done in a cost-effective way. So for this project, we're applying similar cost-effectiveness criteria as what's been done on previous projects in Overland Park on, say, I-435 and other segments of US 69, which sets that reasonableness threshold at 1,800 square feet of wall per benefited receptor. So what that means is if there's an effective solution that can be implemented that requires 1,800 square feet or less per receptor, then it's considered reasonable and cost effective. So our team's been working over the last several months here to develop those abatement solutions on this project that meet those criteria for the properties that were found to be impacted. And in the case of this project, this primarily means the installation of noise walls in certain locations. If you want to flip to the next slide. So now we want to walk through the results of that analysis sort of at a high level. So the graphic on the right in green shows the areas where this analysis is recommending that noise walls be installed as part of this project. And I'm going to walk through that kind of segment by segment here in just a minute. But throughout the entire corridor, all the way from 103rd Street on the north end to 179th Street on the south end, we looked at a total of 23 noise sensitive areas, evaluating whether there were feasible and reasonable solutions. And from that analysis, we're recommending a total of 14 noise walls be carried forward for consideration and potentially for construction. 11 of those 14 are in locations where we're adding capacity in this anticipated near-term construction project. So that segment between 103rd Street and 151st Street. The additional 3 would be recommended for inclusion in future phases when capacity is added further south of 151st Street. Last thing to maybe note here is, with this, excuse me, with this near-term project, if all 11 walls were ultimately moved forward into construction, we do anticipate that this would add about $30 million to the project budget. I'm going to flip to the next slide. Give me a second to take a drink here. So we'll take a few minutes here to walk through the corridor, like I said, in a little more detail, illustrating the locations where we're recommending noise walls be included as part of this phase 1 project. So first, just a little bit of orientation to the slide. On the next 3 slides, US 69 is running across the slide with north being to the left. And then the yellow and black lines that kind of stand out, those are the locations for where noise walls are being recommended. So starting here in this first segment, this is on the northern end near the 119th Street interchange. The study confirmed that there are feasible and reasonable noise walls really on both sides of US 69, primarily adjacent to the residential areas. This area has a sort of a mixture of both single family and multifamily residential, and we found reasonable and feasible solutions in all those locations. One item to note is in this segment, you'll notice that there is not a proposed noise wall north of 119th Street on the west side of US 69. The reason for that is there was a wall already constructed there as part of a previous US 69 project. I'm going to go to the next slide. So moving a little further south, we're now looking at the segment between Blue Valley Parkway and 135th Street. Similar to the previous segment up to the north, the areas that are adjacent to residential areas, noise walls were found to be both feasible and reasonable. One exception to this is on the west side of US 69 between 132nd Street and 135th Street. What we found there is that the apartments that are in that area, they're located significantly further away from US 69, and the analysis really indicates that those receptors won't benefit from a wall simply because of the distance from US 69. And we also did look at what's planned in that space that's immediately adjacent to 69. And right now that's planned to be office and hotel space, which is not as noise sensitive as residential properties. If you go to the next slide. So the last segment that will be included in the phase 1 project is this 2-mile segment between 135th Street and 151st Street. The adjacent properties in this segment, predominantly single family residential, but there are some multifamily residential properties in this area, such as the Tallgrass community on the east side of US 69. And the study really found that the noise walls are feasible and reasonable in this entire segment where they're adjacent to residential properties and therefore are recommended for inclusion in the phase 1 project. If you get south of 151st Street, 151st Street is the southern limit of where that capacity expansion is planned as part of the phase 1 project. There were some other locations where noise walls were found to be feasible and reasonable that stretched between 151st and 159th Street, and then a small segment south of 159th Street, but we recommend that those be included in the next phase when US 69 is widened further to the south. Flip to the next slide. Then from an aesthetic standpoint, so what we're proposing is that the noise walls that are recommended with this project maintain a similar aesthetic concept as what's been done with prior phases of US 69. Those walls have been found to be very effective, efficient, and a minimal maintenance burden for KDOT. So many of you are likely familiar with the walls, similar to what's shown here, but these are just a couple of examples from other places on US 69 and I-435, kind of depending on whether the walls are placed near the roadway or the shoulder, or whether they're placed kind of near the right-of-way line. The next slide. Okay, so the last step in determining whether the noise walls will ultimately be included in the project involves discussions with property owners and tenants to see if the recommended walls out of the analysis are actually desired. And that's going to occur in a handful of different ways. First, we presented very similar information to what we're sharing here. We shared with the Overland Park Public Works Committee on November 15th. So that group has seen the same summary of this analysis. Then obviously we're sharing some of this information with you all tonight as part of this public meeting. But then in January, we'll be hosting a series of neighborhood meetings with the property owners and tenants in the locations where walls are recommended for phase 1. And at those meetings, we'll look more specifically at each one of these walls adjacent to those specific properties and discuss, the placement of the walls, what's the height of the walls in those areas, those sorts of things. Ahead of the meeting, we will be distributing ballots to the property owners and tenants where the noise study identified them as a benefited receptor or a property that could see that noise reduction if the walls were constructed as they're recommended. Then following those meetings, we'll ask for the ballots to be returned in order to cast their votes for whether or not the walls are desired. And if 70% of the votes are in favor of the wall, they'll be included in the project. So a lot more to come as we engage more with the individual neighborhoods and property owners. It's going to be a busy January as we work through that with everyone. So at this point, I'll turn it back to Lindsay and kind of touch on the next steps on engagement and the schedule.
Great, thanks, Cameron. So as Cameron stated, we're going to have a lot of engagement coming up with the noise wall voting, but we also have ongoing engagement for the public that is not necessarily immediately impacted with the noise considerations. As you can see by the proposed schedule, we will be moving into this 30-day public comment period and want to make you aware of that so that you're able to join us and provide some comments. There'll be more on that in just a second. And then we are getting into the construction phases. So we are going to hire a team. We will release the draft RFP, get comments, and then release the final around February. And then have an additional public meeting once we have had an opportunity to work with the design and construction partnership to continue to move this project forward. We are hoping that we are going to move to construction again, kind of the middle of next year. So the public will start to see that and it will be open for traffic in 2025. Go ahead to the next slide. So following this public meeting, we want to get your input on this environmental assessment. We will have opportunities to make comments and ask questions here coming up, but we will have a 30-day comment period and the ability for folks to go in and comment on that on the website and submit questions now. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robin and we will move into the Q&A portion of the meeting.
I'm still on mute. Oh, I'm sorry. You'd think this is the first time. So anyway, this concludes the formal presentation of our meeting, and we will open the virtual podium to questions. And I see that folks are already asking questions. So we will respond to those questions verbally. Lindsay and Cameron will do their best to respond to questions. And then if we don't get to all the questions by 7:30, then we will respond to those in writing, but we will end the meeting at 7:30. This meeting has been recorded, and so we will be posting that tomorrow. So we will take just a minute or two break real quick and get ready and review some of the comments, and then we will start responding to questions. So thanks very much, and we'll be right back. All right, thanks everybody for waiting. Our first question is, I noticed the documents presented at the Overland Park City Council last month added 167th Street to the project. It had a small section about right-of-way acquisition on 139th Street. Can you explain the reasoning for this proposed property acquisition?
So first, I would like to comment about 167th Street getting added to the project. With the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law at the federal level, we have some new resources coming to the state of Kansas. And the first thing we wanted to do was be able to add 167th Street interchange to the project. So we are thrilled to be able to do that and to get this money flowing into our projects as quickly as we can. One point of clarification that I want to make, and it's been raised a couple of times tonight already, the express lanes will be constructed from 103rd to 151st. By adding 167th Street interchange, we are not extending the express lanes further south. We are really just building the interchange and some of the local street infrastructure to improve the flow of traffic in that area, including making that interchange a complete full interchange. On the specific question of the right-of-way, I would need to defer to Cameron on that piece. I do know that we are going to have to acquire some additional right-of-way on that 167th Street corridor to be able to build that full interchange.
Yeah, so just to address the question about right away along 139th Street. So, if you look at what that looks like today, it's a pretty narrow section, low clearance, that sort of thing. So it's anticipated that that crossing will be improved significantly, improve the roadway underneath, as well as add sidewalks and things like that through there. I believe that there is a small right-of-way taking. I believe it's on the west side, on the north side of 139th Street in that location. We can certainly follow up with some more detail about what we're anticipating there, but it's really just to accommodate the improvement in that crossing with a little wider opening and a little better vertical clearance.
All right, the next question. With the current ETL design, there will still be backups and safety issues at northbound 135th Street because there is no collector distributor road for the two entrances at 135th Street exit and the exit at Blue Valley Parkway. Once the ETL is finished, what are you able to do about the traffic backup and safety issues at 135th Street?
I think I will turn that one over to Cameron. He is the most familiar with our traffic studies.
Yeah, yeah. So the configuration that we're proposing with the express lanes, we are not seeing that there are significant backups in that section. I think it's important to note that while there are not collector distributor roads proposed in that section, there are auxiliary lanes between the 135th Street entrances and the exits to Blue Valley Parkway. So we're seeing good operations, not just in the express lanes, but also good operations in the toll-free lanes. Even all the way out to 2050. So these slowdowns that you see today that are, routinely getting down into the, sub 20 mile per hour, that is just not what we're seeing. We're seeing, speeds that are much higher than what they are today, given those improvements.
Thanks, Cameron. All right, our next question. How and when will the neighborhood meetings occur in January?
Well, for those neighborhoods that are going to be directly impacted, there will be a public meeting available for those folks, as well as information mailed to those individuals, I believe. And I know that we are working to try and make those times where can be accessible for people, depending on what time of the day would work best. So we hope to have several options so that we can answer questions and provide folks more information. And really, you know, when those ballots go out to folks that are going to be able to vote on that decision, there will be additional project information provided along with that. And I would just pause and see if Cameron has any additional information he'd like to add.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to that is, you know, in addition to, I'll say, a direct reach out to the individual properties that we've identified as benefited receptors, we also intend to get in contact with the homes associations and the leadership of those homes associations. We've had a number of conversations with various homes associations along the corridor, so have been able to already kind of establish those contacts, and we would very much intend to reach out to them and coordinate with them to find a time that works best for each one of those affected neighborhoods.
Great. Yes, I would just emphasize the importance that those neighborhood associations have had even thus far in our conversations. We've got to have a lot of really good meetings with folks and help explain the project, and really the opportunity to address the noise challenges that are already on this corridor while we're evaluating this project and constructing it. Go ahead, Robin. Our next question.
All right, this is a longer one. What recourse do you suggest for situations like this one? We can generalize. While I'm pleased that the sound walls will be constructed, I am concerned about the wall along the on-ramp from eastbound 135th Street to southbound 69. Specifically, it's not long enough. We get a lot of traffic noise from trucks and cars accelerating along that section. I understand that homes are a little farther from the roadway, but it's an unrestricted noise path and the noise profile is greater than that of a cruising vehicle. Brandon talked about relocating an access point from to Nottingham South Park for ADA compliance. Since that may be right by my house, where exactly are the points you're referring to? And what impacted homeowner will an impacted homeowner have to attend the meeting to vote?
So I believe on the first question, I don't know if I'll turn it over to Cameron or John and see if they have some detailed information for that. And then we can go to 2 and 3.
Yeah, so the locations, I will say we modeled, you know, receptors that were extensively far away from the highway, including along the ramps, including along the arterial streets. So we have a pretty good sense. I'm guessing, I don't know the specific property that you're referring to. We have a pretty good sense of whether they are impacted today. You know, one of the things that goes into determining, you know, where does that wall stop also has to do with whether or not there is a solution that actually will provide the benefit. So if it is substantially far away, it's possible that extending that wall wouldn't have a meaningful effect. Without getting into the kind of the details there, we certainly something we could look at in more detail with you to kind of understand the specifics of an individual property when we get together for these individual neighborhood meetings in January. While I'm on that subject, though, I might talk a little bit about number 3 there, about will an impacted homeowner have to attend the meeting to vote? And the answer is no. The intention is actually to distribute the ballots. For single family residences, it would be distributed by mail ahead of the meeting. For multifamily residents, it'd be a combination of some of them will mail, some of them will hand deliver, depending on what we work out with the individual property managers at those multifamily areas. But no, it is not a requirement that you attend the meeting in order to cast a vote.
And Brandon, on number 2, I wonder if we need to follow up with them individually on the location of that access point, or oh, he's got an answer. Never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, so currently there's a connection from Tomahawk Creek Trail up to 135th Street, just inside of the southbound on-ramp at 135th Street. We're just going to move that trail connection from just to the other side of that on-ramp, in between it and that business that's there. So it's just right across to the west of the on-ramp.
Thank you. Okay, Robin?
If noise walls will cost approximately $30 million, will those funds be taken from toll revenue and at the end date for the toll be pushed back a period of years? If the answer is yes, why do affected residents get to vote on spending the money for noise walls, but I can't vote for adding collector distributor roads on 135th Street?
Well, thank you for the question. I think, you know, the way that we're looking at the noise walls is it's a required addition to the scope of the project. So if we add noise walls, this project would go from now about a $330 million project to $360 million, if that noise wall estimate holds true. And we have to find a way of funding that full $360 million. The way that our traffic studies have shown is that the improvements that we are constructing with that $360 million scope are going to be sufficient to handle the traffic out to, you know, and manage that out into the future for our plan years. So I appreciate the question. I think, you know, when it comes to the noise and the vote for the noise, it's KDOT policy. So if some folks may not want the noise wall constructed, whether they feel like that impedes on their property or is blocking the view of the highway. They may want that viewing. So we want to make that their choice, but it is warranted and is mitigation, because the traffic and the noise levels would grow, and we know that the mitigation would be effective, as Cameron kind of explained through that analysis. Anything to add on that, Cameron?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is the agreement between KDOT and the City of Overland Park on local contribution via toll revenue is set, despite the fact that there is an increase in the project budget with the addition of noise walls. So there, just because the project budget is increasing because the noise analysis is producing this result, it is not resulting in an extension of the operations of the express lanes for that purpose.
Yes, I think that's a really good point. We had some questions about that when 167th Street was added. You know, statutorily, we are limited on what the toll revenues can be used for. We did increase the toll revenue collection from 20 to 30 million as a local contribution on this project. Those revenues will be used in accordance with the statutory requirements. So KDOT cannot use those revenues on just anything. And the overall project will have that 30 million local contribution through toll revenue. And as we've discussed, I think with the city, with the addition of the noise walls, unless there is some, you know, increased cost above sort of the baseline noise wall that they want to see, we do not anticipate going back to the city and asking for any increase in that local contribution at this time.
Great. A question about the noise analysis. Is the noise study analysis available for review?
Yes, I believe that the noise analysis is part of the environmental assessment, and that will be made available for review as well.
That's right. Yes, it's currently under review by Federal Highways, but it'll be part of the larger environmental document that's released for public comment here, hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Will the existing overpasses be affected during construction in phase one, Antioch Road, 132nd Street, and 159th Street?
I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, so the answer on this one is those three specific ones. No, we don't anticipate those to be impacted as part of the first project. The Antioch Road overpass, what we anticipate with phase one, can kind of fit within the openings there at 100 at where Antioch crosses US 69. Same thing with 132nd Street. and 159th Street. Those are fairly recent crossings that have been constructed, say, within the last 10 years or so, and those were done in such a way that they anticipated these additional improvements on US 69 coming along at some point.
All right, and another question about where will the additional 30 millions for noise reduction come from? And I think you've responded to that.
Yes, it'll be from the state highway fund, whether that's federal resources or state resources. The funding available to KDOT will be how those are paid for.
How will noise walls affect the parks, bicycle, and pedestrian facilities?
I might see if Brandon wants to answer that question.
Or I
Or
can
Cameron.
I can take
Go
it.
ahead, Cameron.
Yeah, so there's a handful of locations where the recommended noise walls are adjacent to some of those parallel trails that go up and down US 69. I will say, as we conducted the environmental analysis, the lengths of impacts, the acres of parks and things like that, those are accounted for. The noise walls were part of that analysis, so we feel like we're accurately capturing what those impacts would be with some of the detail that Brandon shared with you earlier. There are cases where the installation of those noise walls may have that temporary impacts that Brandon discussed at several of the adjacent trails. But again, they're just temporary impacts. They'll be restored as part of the project.
Will residents of Tallgrass Creek have an opportunity to vote on the noise barrier?
The short answer is yes. For those folks that are tenants in the affected locations, they will all have an opportunity to vote on whether those will be constructed. That was an easy one. More of those.
If light rail commuting is ever considered for this corridor, will it require a complete redesign of the concept, or will the current toll express concept lend itself to rail modification?
Well, I do know that some of those concepts were explored for this corridor, and with the current use of public transit, that did not look like a good option to help manage the amount of traffic that we have on this corridor. However, in the future, if there is interest in modifying the highway to add light rail, we, I think, would have to study it at that time of what the most efficient way of doing that would be. And depending on that time frame, the express toll lanes are going to be around under current law until the toll project is paid off. So as of right now, the express toll lanes would go away, sunset, unless state law changes. I want to see if Cameron has anything to add. They did explore this as an option, and there may be some additional detail about what was looked at previously.
Yeah, so there has been a rail study done. It's been some time since it was evaluated on this corridor. I think the only thing that I would add to Lindsay's comments is, yes, transit options were evaluated here in this corridor, and really, improving bus operations was really found to be the most realistic transit enhancement that we see here on US 69. Needless to say, if sometime in the future there's a lot of interest in expanded rail service throughout the Kansas City metro area, there would have to be a pretty detailed study done at that point to see how that fits within the corridor, what modifications would need to be made for the roadway, that sort of thing.
Right. As a Nottingham Forest South HOA member, we will want to review and have some input into the design of the bridge over 139th Street. Small bridge, and incorporate a traffic circle into the east-west traffic into Nottingham Forest South from Metcalf.
Great. Thank you for that comment. And I know that, you know, the city of Overland Park has been a partner with us in this project since the beginning, and in all the studies of the corridor as well. And so I know that they will be, you know, continue to be a partner, and we will evaluate that comment and that desire as we move forward.
All right. What plan is there for traffic control on Antioch and Metcalf during construction sequencing from 151st Street to 435 on both streets? I suspect that the traffic will increase on those non-highway roads.
I'll let Cameron respond to that, but one of the things that we will be evaluating along with the rest of the project team, including the Turnpike and the city, is, you know, how the contractor and design team plan to manage traffic during construction. I know that this is something that we've already discussed with the city of Overland Park, and Cameron, I don't know if any detail has been reached on that.
So I think you hit on a couple of the points that I wanted to emphasize there too, and that is that there's a clear recognition that there's a lot of traffic on US 69 today. As this is under construction, there's no question that there's going to be, you know, there's going to be impacts of that and challenges of that. That's one of the reasons why, and one of the biggest differentiating reasons why I think that KDOT has decided to pursue design build as a delivery model here, is because it does allow this competition with designer contractor teams to come in and propose innovative ideas on how best to handle traffic during construction. And that's not just traffic on US 69, but how does it affect the broader network. So that's something that we'll be working through with the design build teams as they compete for the project, and really taking a deep dive and evaluating, you know, how are they planning on addressing traffic during construction.
All right, next question. As a front row Brandon Place resident and a heavy bike trail user, I am thrilled to hear sound walls are coming. Sorry to hear the bike trail will be full of detours, but we understand. Thank you, Reed. Next comment, my neighborhood and residence backs up directly to 69 at 120th Street in Nottingham Court. Currently, the noise level is abominable. Will the noise walls include any organic composition like trees or greenery to help noise abatement or aesthetics?
So as of right now, we are planning on being consistent with the noise wall installation with what is further north on the corridor. So north of 103rd Street, we already have noise walls constructed. I think if there's interest in landscaping or, you know, an alternative treatment for aesthetics on the noise walls, we would need to have that discussion with the city. The you know, it just is kind of, it's going to be up to a partnership with the city if there's some additional investment related to that they would want to do. So but yeah, we're open to talking about it for sure.
All right. With the build of Blue Hawk at 159th Street, wouldn't it make sense to have the toll lane to 159th Street?
So currently we have looked at that, and we do know that that is going to be a need in the future. Currently the lane, the auxiliary lane that is built from 151st to 159th is going to help manage some of that traffic for Blue Hawk. But I hear you, and I think as we continue to see additional development further south, our traffic projections are showing that additional capacity needs are going to exist south of 151st Street on down to 179th. Cameron, do you have any additional information you'd like to add?
The only thing that I would add is similar to what Lindsay said. You know, with that section down there, and the fact that there's auxiliary lanes that are present between the interchanges at 159th and 151st, and then on down to 167th Street. We looked at whether the express lanes made sense to actually extend further south, And really what we found is those sections operate pretty well and will operate pretty well, for maybe 15, 20 years out into the future. And so we didn't see a lot of usage of the express lanes if they had continued further to the south. So that's why 151st was kind of chosen as that logical place to end this first project. But certainly, as Lindsay said, is in the long term, as traffic continues to grow, something to consider as there's a further expansion all the way on down to 179th in all likelihood.
And one thing that I will say is with the Blue Hawk development and Advent Health, those two things were huge drivers in making sure that we were going to be able to get to those improvements on 167th Street. So I think having that full interchange will allow for more traffic to utilize that interchange as well as 159th. So I think you'll see some of that traffic utilize that other interchange as well once it's completed.
All right. The photos which are shown show the noise barriers. There is landscaping on the residential side of the barrier. Will that landscaping be included in the scope of the work, and how are those plans approved?
So on the sort of city side of the noise walls, I think that that's a conversation that can be had either with your neighborhood association or with the city, depending on where you're talking about, or the property owner um, on that other side. As far as the KDOT portion of this and the construction piece, we're really focused on the noise walls and then in towards the highway is our focus and what we have the resources to invest for.
All right. Is there any consideration for outlawing engine braking by trucks on 69 as part of this project? This is especially an issue on northbound 69 between 151st and 135th Streets.
I think that's something that we can explore. Typically, the Jake brake issue can be a locally addressed issue, but I would need to explore that. We might need to follow up more on that policy unless somebody else in the room is more familiar with truck braking.
I'm not familiar with whether it's already prohibited in this section.
Okay.
Something that certainly could look into and see if that's the case or what's the process for putting that kind of measure in place.
Yeah, we will be sure to follow up with you directly on that question and um, potentially add something on the website if we get a better understanding.
All right. Um, Next question. What are the projected toll rates?
Ooh, I could go off the top of my head, but I'm going to turn it over to Cameron for that answer.
Yeah, I can share that. So this is something that we shared at the April public meeting. So if you're interested in looking at the specifics or correcting us if I give you the wrong numbers, all that is actually on the website, and you're welcome to take a look at that. But um, the to answer your question more directly, the toll rates will vary depending on what the level of congestion is on the roadway. So at times where it's not busy, middle of the day, weekends and things like that, anticipated toll rates would be pretty low, somewhere in that 35 to 50 cents kind of range, depending on whether you're taking just a partial length trip through the corridor or whether you're traveling the entire length of the corridor. During those peak periods, we anticipate that toll rates would be somewhere around $1.50 to $1.75, depending on, again, how long of a trip you're taking. Are you driving the full length from 151st to 103rd Street? And also just how busy is it in those times of day? So that kind of gives you a range of low end 35 to 50 cents, high end $1.50 to $1.75. And please let us know if I'm misquoting what we shared back
No,
in
that
April.
sounded very familiar. And what I'd say is in the April public meeting, we walked through a number of different scenarios for types of trips that people may be taking based on our traffic numbers and the study that was conducted. So encourage you to check that out and see all of those different examples. It's really good information.
All right. Another question about aesthetics. Will we have an opportunity to impact the design aesthetics or placement of the noise walls?
Yes, as part of the public engagement on the design of the project, those things will be discussed. And I would say that, you know, the project partners are all going to have an opportunity to kind of weigh in on that as well. So as we get through this, you know, the schedule I walked through, we have the RFP process. Once we have a team on board, they will start reviewing design options with the public as well. So again, this public engagement is not going to stop anytime soon, and we are going to continue to provide information as we move toward construction.
All right. How will an expanded intersection at 167th Street affect the homeowners on the south on the south of 167th Street?
I I believe we've evaluated this. I know we have to acquire additional right of way, but I do not know if there's any home impact. So I'll turn it over to Cameron for that.
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So the largest impacts are on the south side of 167th Street, on the west side of US 69. That stretch between US 69 and Antioch, and there are some impacts. Those are one of the locations when you as we kind of walk through the environmental document when that's made public, you'll be able to see that. But there are some right-of-way impacts along that stretch, primarily west on the south side. So there are some impacts there.
Okay. Here's a two-parter. When the neighborhood meetings occur, it seems important the information about the arc of the noise distance past the wall to the receptor residences be included in this presentation. Is this planned? And part two is input from Overland Park Public Works or other departments is needed regarding the treatment between adjacent roads. For example, Grant adjacent to the highway south of 119th, the Overland Park right-of-way distance is now 9 feet or less to the KDOT chain link fence. What will the OP permit to be planted in this distance and who will pay for it?
So on your first question about the neighborhood meetings, we can certainly present the information that we've put together for the noise study. I think the arc of the noise is really being looked at through that federal model where we've really identified where the folks that are going to be impacted by the noise are located, and then how the noise wall will actually mitigate that noise to those homeowners or tenants. So I think that that is an important information that we will show at these public meetings. Um, you know, there's only so much you can do to eliminate the noise beyond too far past the noise wall. But we can certainly talk about that during those neighborhood meetings. I appreciate you suggesting that we do that. And on the second piece, I am not sure, and would need to defer to Cameron, or we may need to follow up with you afterward.
Yeah, one thing that I think is maybe an important point to make here is when we're talking about the treatments on the, I'll say the resident side of the noise walls, one way that this um, has been approached on some of the other projects on US 69 and on I-435, and it was brought up, you know, one of the pictures about there was some landscaping in the areas that were on, I'll say, on the resident side of the wall. A lot of times that's not done with the initial roadway construction project. We're asking this contractor to put the walls in place, but then there's always the opportunity to follow on with a standalone project that addresses landscaping or other aesthetic treatments. That's something that would just have to be worked through with the city and work through those details, and that's going to take some time and something that I think that we would likely approach similarly on this project, where that's something that is addressed after the primary roadway construction project is complete.
And we did have a member of the team provide us an answer on the truck braking. So the Jake brake, kind of that relieve valve braking that creates a significant amount of noise is prohibited in Overland Park and is enforced by Overland Park Police Department. And if you are experiencing that, you can call the non-emergency phone number. We will still follow up with the person that asked in case they're no longer on the call, but just wanted to make everybody else aware of that. It is prohibited in Overland Park. Thank you.
All right. Next question. Will additional lighting be required and suggested? If so, what impact will that have on light impact on residential homes?
Go ahead, Cameron.
Yeah, so I can talk about that a little bit. So yes, there is the intention to have some additional lighting along US 69. There's some stretches that are not continuously lit. Um, Recommending that that be part of what's required with the project is some continuous lighting. One feature of that is in most of those locations, as opposed to, you know, it wouldn't all be large tower lights, the really tall, 100-foot tall tower lights. In some locations would be the opportunity to do that with more with lighting that's similar to what you might see on an arterial street that's a little closer to the ground. That way it has less of an effect on the surrounding properties. But those are things that we'll be working through with the design builder.
Okay, next question. Will the 139th Street underpass be rebuilt, and how does the rebuild affect traffic on both 69 Highway and 139th Street?
Let me take that one. So yes, the 139th Street crossing will be rebuilt as part of the phase one project. You know, anticipated that there'd have to be some staging of the construction to maintain traffic on US 69 as they build that crossing, the new crossing there. Again, we'll be looking to some creativity from the design build teams on specifically how they will do that. For the 139th Street traffic itself, this is something that we've had conversations with the city, and I think during construction there would be some short-term closures that would not allow traffic to pass underneath US 69 during construction. But again, short-term temporary impacts during construction.
Okay, next question. Is there anything in the Kansas law that allowed the addition of toll lanes on 69 that prohibits selling this highway to a private entity in the future?
That's a great question, Charles. I don't believe that there is any prohibition in the law. However, that would certainly be an issue that the legislature would be involved with. And I think, as this legislation came to be, allowing KDOT to really look at tolling as an option on our state highways, the coordination between the community and the Turnpike Authority, and all of those checks and balances, I believe you would have to go through a similar process if anything like that were to be considered. Um, and I know that the legislature would have a lot to say, and there's also nothing that enables it. So it may not be prohibited, but it also isn't an authority granted to the secretary at this time.
How many points and where will you be able to get on and off the express lanes?
Go ahead.
Okay, so in each of the directions, like in the northbound direction, you'll be able to get on just north of 151st Street. There's a direct connect option to take you to Blue Valley Parkway. Another potential exit point that is north of Blue Valley Parkway that will serve the interchanges at 119th Street, College Boulevard, and 435, and then an opportunity to continue on to the north and exit the express lanes just to the north of 103rd Street. So that's sort of, depending on how you look at it, 3 or 4 different points along there where there's that opportunity to make a choice to get in or out of the express lanes. Very similar coming southbound, opportunity to enter the express lanes at 103rd Street, another opportunity to enter or exit the express lanes in the area to the south of 119th Street, and then another opportunity to exit just to the south of 135th Street.
All right, this comment is support the installation of noise mitigation efforts with sound walls and any other efforts to reduce decibel levels from traffic. Currently experiencing higher levels of traffic noise in Kensington Manor.
Thank you. Yes, that is our data supports your your assessment there for sure.
All right. The message board on 69 North at 132nd Street seems to generate a lot of traffic backup. Will that stay in place?
So generally speaking, yes, some of the message boards and other, other ITS devices that are out there on US 69 today are intended to stay. The specifically whether the message board is creating a traffic backup. Um, I don't know whether that's the case. I think a lot of this is just the natural congestion that's out there, and but yes, the intent is to keep a lot of those same devices that are out there with the project and reinstall those.
Okay, thanks. Next question. Since the toll lanes are only available years in the future, why cannot immediate improvements be done to the entry ramp from 119th Street onto northbound 69 early in 2022? I and many other motorists have great difficulty merging onto northbound 69 from 119th Street, and I'm very scared or am scared very often about having a bad car accident because the ramp is so extremely short. This bottleneck also forces cars already on 69 to slow way down to allow cars to merge from the ramp, or else the cars are forced to merge uh, to the passing lane to allow cars to merge. There is a long enough stretch of land, a block or more, already there, and that is just needs to be paved, even just as a backstop to extend the ramp.
Well, we can certainly take that into consideration when we're evaluating the different proposals and the phasing of the construction for this project to see if anything can be moved forward to address um, the current trips that are being uh, used on the corridor. Cameron, anything else to add on that?
The only thing that I would add is, and we've mentioned this a couple of times of the reason why KDOT is moving forward with design build is because this puts us in the position to get this project done in the fastest possible schedule. This is going to be the first project that is part of the new IKE program, and as such, I think we're on the path to try and alleviate that problem as quickly as possible. Um, I guess the other thing that I would add is, the configuration that's anticipated through there. It does make some of the improvements that you're referring to with auxiliary lanes that come on from 119th Street and are continuous on up to College and 435. So I think as a result of the project, a lot of those things are going to be addressed, and design build's given us the opportunity to do that as quickly as we can.
Great, thank you. The truck engine braking noise is a significant problem all along the corridor. And we will provide that information that about the ordinance and the non-emergency number to call so that you can follow up with them.
Yep. And I would just say, certainly in our noise analysis, we identified the decibel levels on the corridor are already high, whether that's from vehicle traffic, tires on pavement, truck braking, and we are excited that we can consider, noise mitigation for the traffic that's already there, much less, potential additional traffic in the future.
All right. Will intersections at east and west thoroughfares 435 College, 119th, 135th Street all be closed at the same time?
So we wouldn't anticipate that. Again, one of the things that we're going to be looking for some creativity from the various design build teams that are competing to win the job is how well do they handle traffic, and what is their plan for maintaining traffic during the project. shutting all those down at the same time would certainly have an effect. So I wouldn't anticipate that that's a likely strategy.
Okay. Will the walls be constructed on the highest ground or closer to the highway?
So I think the answer that I would say is it's gonna vary based on the location on the corridor. If there's an opportunity, if it's lower ground, the wall might be taller. And if it's higher ground, the wall might be shorter. What we're trying to do is mitigate the noise to those receptors, and really maximize the value of that asset to really reduce the decibel levels. Cameron, do you have any specific examples you'd want to share?
I would just say, generally speaking, the walls are positioned at the highest point, whether that's at the right of way line or whether that's at the highway, because it's the way to have a meaningful impact with the least amount of wall construction if you're placing that at the highest point. So it really depends on the terrain, as Lindsay said, but generally speaking, yes, you're looking for um, placing the wall. It's the most efficient place to place it is at the highest point.
I do not believe there are signs posted on 69 to say jake braking is prohibited. When I asked City of OP, they told me it was up to the state to do it.
Okay, thank you. I will check into that and see. One of the signs are never as easy as they seem. So if there's space to accommodate those, or if there's a way that we can put those up, hopefully the enforcement of that issue and the violation of the law will help reduce that. So we will visit with the city and make sure that we have understanding of how to get the word out on that issue. Okay. I see that we have we've got a really long question, and there may be some components of this that we are not going to be able to answer, um, at least in the public forum that's related to the proposal process for the design and construction teams. Um,
Yeah, I agree. This is a question that's about some of the detailed noise requirements that'll be in the RFP. I think we'll follow up directly with you on that and try and answer your question there.
Are there any traffic devices that will prevent people from illegally cutting into the toll lane other than road markings? How will people that cut into the into the lane illegally be identified and ticketed? Would this be enforced via cameras or traditional methods?
So it's a really good question, and one thing that we're currently working with KTA on, identifying how exactly that's going to be enforced. We want to maximize utilization of this additional capacity, so we are using road markings as the identified legal entrance and exits. In the event that there's an emergency, you don't want that physical barrier or other barrier to be in the way of being able to use that for emergency response. So what we've been talking about, and we've been looking at how other express lanes operate around the country, there are fines. This would be something that would be definitely traditionally enforced for law enforcement, both Overland Park and the Kansas Highway Patrol. Exactly how that's going to be done is still being worked out between KDOT and the KTA. I'd also like a response to
There are a couple
Oh, okay. Yeah, we just got another comment about the previous question that we aren't answering on the forum. So that is particularly related to the procurement process of the design build team. So there are aspects of that that either we're not going to be able to answer until the draft RFP is released, but we can certainly share the question with you and follow up with any information that we could provide that was contained in those questions. So thank you. We're not trying to hide anything. We can't talk about the procurement process until we release it to everyone. Okay, are there any other questions out there? We've got some more time. 29 more minutes, 28 more minutes. If anybody's got anything else, get your last question submitted. One thing just to go back to, just so that there's a lot of clarity around it, a member of our team had mentioned this in making sure everybody understands. So we have a lot of people that take trips between 135th Street and Blue Valley Parkway, both northbound and southbound. So I think it's really important to know that, especially on those northbound travelers that are wanting to get off at Blue Valley Parkway, if you do enter the express lane, you will have direct connection to Blue Valley Parkway without having to cross the traffic to get off at that exit. And then on, southbound, the trips to 135th Street, part of this project is really to bring Blue Valley Parkway instead of a left entrance into the southbound lanes. We will be bringing that overpass all the way over to the right side so that traffic enters more normally when they come into US 69 southbound. And the 135th Street traffic that is entering to get to that street is not going to have to enter US 69 and then get off at 135th Street. That movement will be much easier and much safer. That is a huge safety concern of the city and of KDOT, and we are excited that this project is going to get to address that, and hopefully reduce the number of incidents we're seeing at peak. We have another question.
What is the expected date of the EA release? Brandon, you can answer that.
Yeah, we don't have an official date right now. It's finishing review with FHWA as we speak this week, but it should be out by the end of December. There will be a notice sent out via email when it is available.
Thank you. What other utilities will need to be relocated due to this expansion?
So I know for sure there are, there are a number of utilities that are close in this corridor. We've already started talking with them and working on those relocations. I don't know if it's public information. I know we've talked with Water One, but there are several utilities on the corridor, and we're working with them to make sure that those relocations are sequenced well with the construction.
Yeah, one thing that I might add to that is again going back to the delivery model here of design build. Unlike a traditional project where a lot of times those utility impacts are clearly identified and dealt with ahead of the construction, one of the things with design build is the entity that's really in the best position to minimize and then manage those utility relocations is the selective design build team. And that's what we'll be doing here. What we've been doing to prepare for that is, as Lindsay alluded to, a lot of conversation with the utility owners that are in the corridor, putting together the process by which they'll interact both with KDOT as well as with the design build team as they identify those utility impacts as a result of those their unique solution that's going to be carried forward. So yeah, we've been doing a lot of work on that front to get prepared, but the exact impacts are going to be dependent on the final design that the design builder carries forward.
Okay. Any other questions? Don't see
I
any
will
coming in.
I think it is worth mentioning, if there aren't other questions here, it's not the last opportunity that you have to submit a
Yes.
question. There's an online portion of this public meeting that's going to be open. Is it open already?
Yeah.
It's open already, and so there's opportunity to get on there and submit a question to our team. If we didn't get to it here, we will respond to that back to you in writing. So certainly invite you to do that. And there's also a lot of additional information, more detail than what we could cover here in this setting, particularly on some of the environmental components of the project. So please, we invite you to go take a look at that. And if there's other questions or things you want to submit via that mechanism, then please let us know.
We do have one final, two questions. Thank you guys for getting those in. All right.
All right. You stated direct northbound access from the toll lane to Blue Valley Parkway. Will there be a ramp from Blue Valley to US 69 toll lane direct?
Yes, is the short answer. Cameron's nodding. He'll have more words though.
Yeah, yes is the is the answer. The intent is to have a direct connect out of the northbound express lane directly to Blue Valley Parkway, and then similarly in the southbound direction, an opportunity to come directly from Blue Valley Parkway and into the southbound express lane.
All right. Jeff asks, when will detailed plans be available to show exactly where the new construction will encroach on each residential neighborhood along 69?
So the impacts that we're anticipating as part of the preliminary work that's been done thus far, those are documented in the EA. So it shows there's exhibits in that environmental assessment that show where there's anticipated right-of-way takings and that sort of thing, as well as impacts to parks and trails and things like that that are along US 69. So a lot of that is in there based on the preliminary work that's been done to date. As Brandon alluded to, um, soon. As soon as the review is completed by Federal Highways, we'll be releasing that publicly.
And then a question, will there be a sound wall along where Blue Hawk Apartments homes are located just north of 167th?
So at this time, we are not widening US 69 between or south of 151st Street. So right now, we are not anticipating building any noise walls south of 151st Street. As traffic continues to grow and as we start to see the need for that continued highway expansion, so in the later phases of the project, we have evaluated the corridor and they may be constructed in the future when we do that additional highway expansion.
All right, so we don't have any additional questions right now that to answer, so we will hang out here for a minute or two longer. We still have about 50 people on the call, so if you have additional questions, please type them in. We do so much appreciate you all being here and providing your questions and allowing us the opportunity to respond. And we will, a recording of this meeting will be available online tomorrow, as well as the on-demand version of the meeting is available for you to review or send to your friends. So feel free to do so. And we will be continuing to accept comments for a very long time. So please go ahead and provide your comments and we will respond back. And then when the EA is available, we will post that and send an update to everyone that has signed in at the meeting so that you have the opportunity to review the document in full and provide additional feedback.
Okay, well, on behalf of all of the partners on the project, I just want to thank everybody again for attending tonight. Please check out the website. We can look back on all the information, all the public meetings that we've done. All of the information is there. And again, if you can't find something that you're looking for, just submit a question and our team will follow up. Thank you all again and have a wonderful evening.